I was birthed by poetry, basically. You know, I'm a product of literature from a young age. I call myself an organic poet. And for me, that comes from the fact that I don't write about what I don't understand, believe in, and can sustain. Emotionally, mentally, religiously, I make sure those boundaries are all met. Poems are heartbeats, and you have to listen. You really have to listen.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the People and Stories podcast. My name is Joel Oumo, and I think this is something that we have wanted to do for a very long time. But as we know, artists and creatives, we are always victims of procrastination. Sometimes we just get to think in our heads and never do something. But this comes as the very first episode, and today I think I have someone who is very incredible in the art scene in Uganda, somebody that identifies with quite a number of things that he does, ranging from being a performer, a poetry trainer, somebody who identifies also as a playwright. But most importantly, he says the most incredible thing about him is being a father. So I'm talking about Luz the poet. I had to really be so sure that that's how the name is pronounced. But welcome, Luz. It's really a very incredible opportunity to get to talk to you. Uh, this is something. This podcast is really like something we wanted to have an opportunity to share conversations with people that we feel are doing incredible work in communities via what they are capable of doing creatively, and also just people that have excelled in the spirit of boldness and really daring to have a certain identity or a certain story. I'm really glad to welcome you as the first guest to this, and somehow kind of like kick us off. I'll have like a just a curious question. I mean, with all these incredible things that you're doing, from being a playwright, being a poet, teaching poetry, and also being a political scientist in a way. In like, if you had to explain to a child what you do, what would you tell them?
Ah, Joel, thank you for having me. That's a very tough one for our first question. If I had to explain to, let's say, my child, mm, I would tell her that her dad is a societal thinker.
Right.
Um, I think I take myself to be a surgeon of society's thought structure. Uh, I think my most important role as a creative, not just on page but also on stage and even backstage, is to be a custodian of language and narratives. Uh, Poetry is a language, and I think it speaks so many emotions that cross over to everyone's experience in reality. So I have to be a custodian of those emotions by protecting the language that is creative writing. So I would basically tell my child what I do for a living is think and speak my thoughts.
That's a very beautiful answer. It's really incredible getting paid to think. Uh, but also that sounds like a very fancy thing to say. And I'm very sure not just me, but even the audience will be curious to know. I see you donning on a very beautiful Afrocentric cultural attire there. I also
Yes.
see there's a lot of books in your background. It's giving already the kind of person that you are. But
Mm.
just if you could take us back in memory lane, we want to understand who Luz is from back in the days. If you could just give us a vivid picture of how your childhood was and where you grew up from, and a couple of things that relate with your early childhood.
Um, I was raised by women. I don't think I ever had any male parenting. I was raised by my grandmother for most of my childhood. Then, prior to my teenagehood, my mom came in. She was now more available because my mom had me when she was really, really young. She had all of us when we were really, really young. So she had to catch up on a lot of societal expectations before she really gets time to actually get to know us and for us to get to know her. So my childhood was mostly filled with a lot of feminine energy, and that impacted me in a way. Um, I think I did not get to deal with most things young boys deal with. You know, I didn't lack the knowledge about the presence of feminine energy. So it helped me so much socially. Even though I have only two sisters and a lot more brothers, I still knew how to blend in with both energies. Because as a male, I knew how to blend with the male energy already. Play football with my boys, but then also as someone who was spending their entire life around women at home, from the young siblings to my grandmother, the aunties. There were just so many females. I still knew how to blend into that. So it made me, I guess, stand out. But my being creative is not something that came as a surprise to me, because even as a little child, I liked making up stuff. I like making up stuff a lot. I would really tell made up stories. Uh, I think my environment was too active. There was just so much fun going on, so many things that are inspiring going on. Women are inspiring people. I don't know if other people see it that way, but if you are graced to be around so many women, much more women than men, you realize that there's just so much inspiration going on. So it was so easy for me to come up with things to be more interesting than the other people, because I understood both worlds. I understood both angles as a child. So growing up, it just kept growing with me. As a teenager, I was very, very close to my cousin sisters and my aunt, their mom. And even as a teenager, I spent a lot of time with females. Even the friends I have up to now, I have more female friends. So I think for me, my entire childhood was designed around trusting women a lot. And even when I began my creating journey, I was creating a lot more with women or about women. The love poems that made so many rounds that I no longer do now. It was basically, my life has been about a sort of, I think my entire childhood was filled with a lot of feminine energy that impacted me as a young boy. And then my adult life was filled with more of that. And of course, the two experiences are very different. They are very different. But at the end of the day, it just molded me into this concept that the community gets to see now. So my mom was a literature teacher at ISU, which gave me access to so many awesome literature books and stories, and experiencing her as a person too, it was awesome. So to me, I was birthed by poetry, basically. I'm a
Um,
product of literature from a young age.
I want to
Yeah.
pick from, I think you've continuously stated that you are a product of feminine energy. And I want to kind of share the experience of personally growing up. My first 12 years, I would say, I grew up in a feminine environment with my mother and her family. And I think when I moved in with my dad at 13, one of the biggest issues that I probably had was the
Mm.
transition into a male-dominated world because my father's family
Yeah,
is the
yeah, yeah.
opposite. It's
Yes.
dominated by males. So, as someone who had to grow up so much in a feminine society and being raised by women, are there any kind of transitional challenges that you probably might have noticed when it came to, okay, this is Luz, he grew up as a boy, raised up by women, but now he has to be present in a male world. Did you kind of have any sort of challenges around that?
Um, I wouldn't call them challenges, but I had experiences that made me realize I either know too much that the men around me don't seem to know, or are ignorant about getting to know, or I am. Well, at first I thought being that kind of breed makes you less of a man because as a teenage boy, all you care about is having an appeal that is more macho and stuff. But then as I grew older, I realized that I am more of a man than most men around me because if necessity calls for it, I can raise to the occasion of understanding a woman at an elevation that most of my male friends could only dream of. So at back then I would call it a challenge. It was very challenging hanging out with male friends because the conversations we were having were disturbing for me because I knew the importance of a female person, and I knew it at a deep level because I had bonded with females my whole life. I had gotten to see into that realm of what it actually looks like for them, how the world is for them, how they navigate it. So conversations about girls for me were different than what my male friends were having.
Mm,
And of course there was mockery going on, towards me. And as a teenage boy that gets to you a little. But then as I grew older I realized that no, I am not the I'm not the one with a problem. It stopped being a challenge. It became something to be really proud of, and sometimes you throw in a word or two to educate because us men, we don't listen. We like to
yes.
teach, but learning is very hard for us. So sometimes I call out if it gets too much. I call my friends out. I'm like, no, don't think like that. But in most cases, you just look on and acknowledge that you are better than the moment that is going on right now, the verbal moment, the verbal bonding going on. You realize that you are the one in the room who is better than all that, who will not contribute in such a way. And it also gives you the texture of the one friend they can call when they want to go correct about something. Because sometimes it's not good to just condemn uh, people for what they don't understand about an entirely different circle of reality. Sometimes it's good to just wait for them to come around and seek the knowledge. So I always look forward to those moments, but it was not easy as a teenager. It was a challenge a little bit, mostly because of the fact that teenage boys bond a lot about girls,
Right.
and now for me, I didn't know what the obsession was about because I already it wasn't a mystery for me. It was a fascination. For them, it was a mystery. The idea of a female was a mystery for them. For me, it was a fascination. I'm fascinated. I'm pleased. I am in debt literally. I just want to honor these people. And then for my male friends, it was a mystery that they had to crack with so many theories, and
Yeah.
some were of course offensive because they are young and they don't really check themselves. They don't filtrate what they are verbally expressing, and that was challenging because every time I had something to say, it was just too much for them to process or acknowledge or understand. But then that language barrier did not bother me after some time. It just became a uniqueness that I had to own and wear as a sense of pride. So that's the realm I am right now. Up to now, I don't find it challenging. I am actually in debt of everyone who has ever contributed a brick on my personality, because it makes me, I guess, even more likable, if I dare to
Mm.
say. Yeah.
So I still want to keep it relating to the female world, if I would say. I kind of feel like the universe is really paying you for being an incredible being an incredible product of the feminine energy, and God blesses you with a very beautiful daughter. I have seen her, a couple of pictures of her that you've shared maybe
Yeah.
sometimes on WhatsApp, and
Mm.
also seeing it just from an external point of view, uh, it kind of gives you that you really put in a lot of dedication to be a father. But I kind of want to pick your mind when it comes to some of the things that you've learned as a boy that is growing up in the female world, relating it to the relationship you're trying to create with your daughter. What are some of the things that you feel like you have been able to kind of learn from being a boy growing up in the male world, and you're using them as kind of strategies to be a better father to your daughter?
Um, if I even answered that, I would like to just uh, acknowledge for our sake, both of us, the fact that for me, clarify basically that for me, I don't see this world as a male's world. You know, the lens I have, just we are sharing it. We are sharing it. So it has been easy for me to navigate fatherhood, being a girl dad, because I see this as my daughter's world, like her place of belonging. She could literally do anything she wants on this soil that we step on. And I like that you said a product of feminine energy, because the concept right now in society kind of tries to separate men from acknowledging uh, or attaching themselves to feminine energy in any way. And I like that we've reached a point where I can identify as a product of feminine energy, basing of my upbringing, basing on the nurturing I received to become what I am. And I think what I have had to remind myself most as a father to to a girl child is that my role is not to dominate her moments as a woman or as a young girl. My role is to simply witness and come in whenever I've been given consent to assist, most especially when she becomes a young adult. Because the mistakes our great great grandfathers did were to restrict the girl child into this corner where she has to just watch the world get on with everything it has to get on with, and just be the one that stays home and wait to celebrate the victory, to be the witness of how men are winning. But now the world is changing. Now men are doing that. Men are waiting from home to witness women win. Women are going out from the same doors with men, walking on the same streets, sitting in the same boardrooms to win together. So when my daughter is finally a teenager and she's beginning to choose between all these personalities that society might suggest a woman should take on, I should just be a witness. I should not give her any direction. I should wait to see what he chooses, because we make women feel like, or we make our daughters feel like there's just a few options to choose from, and all these options should be about how presentable you seem to the man that will finally lure you into a marriage. But that is not the case. That is not the reality. The reality is there are so many options. In fact, every single bit of the world, every idea of life and reality is an option for her to choose from. And my role as her father, or as an important male figure in her life, is to simply wait for her consent. Because I have to trust that she has a consciousness, and sometimes she will do the mistakes. And when she makes mistakes, she will come for help. Because I'm her father, she's my child. She knows when this mistake is too big, only dad can handle it for me. Or when this is too little, I can talk about it with my friends or my boyfriend. So my plan is to simply be a witness. See how this young kid grows into this incredible woman, because she will be an incredible woman. I don't know of a woman who is not an incredible woman. So I have that confidence already. I just have to witness.
That's such a beautiful thing to say. I think the conversation is probably something that will, if you had to like walk a few generations back and had that conversation in front of clan leaders, the next topic would be when they are going to banish you from the clan. But I
Exactly.
think these conversations are really something that we need to have more spaces to converse just around how modern fatherhood can be able to be something that's relatable. I like the way you put the world as at a point of equilibrium. And just sticking around like your mindset and your perspectives around not just fatherhood, I kind of want us to transition a little bit now to some of the incredible work that you're doing. I think it's been quite now, maybe around 4 or 5 years that I've seen you active in the Ugandan poetry scene. But not only that, I have seen you grow into somebody who is using art as a point of activism. Recently, I've also seen you really trigger very interesting conversations just via your WhatsApp statuses. And I think it's at this point that maybe I would like you to give a more of like a turning point that, for example, I think probably poetry is something that you say defines your entire background in art. But what would you say was the triggering moment or triggering factor that told you internally that I think this is something that I want to use as a weapon or as a tool to be a storyteller, to be an advocate of my beliefs, and just to really spell my own truth in the world?
Um, I've actually done this for 9 years. I'll be making 10 years this year, and I'll be celebrating. You'll be invited.
Thank you.
Um, my trigger is, as much as I remember, when I lost my mom, during that period of grief, is when I decided the best way for me to not lose my mind in thoughts and to let out everything that I'm feeling and thinking is through poems. At first, I did not know that you could perform this or make a career out of it. I wanted to escape this dark hole. But when I shared with a friend, I still remember her, she was called Gabi, Adrina Gabi. She gave me Bash Mutumba's number. I think you know Bash Mutumba.
Yeah.
And we talked with Bash, and he invited me for a poetry night. That was in 2015, yeah. Kelele. They were just beginning. And then I watched these poets express themselves. Then I realized that there is more to poetry than writing dead people poems. there's love, there's protest poetry, there's just comic poetry. There is poetry. Most people think poetry has just come. Actually, poetry has been there since 2011. George the Poet. Then for Uganda, the Bashmutumbas were actually playing guitar, singing, and doing poetry. It was just not called poetry then. We weren't Gen Zs, so we didn't really think much into it, slanging it around. But we were doing it. We did it a lot. I think most of the memories I have of my performances, they had music and vocalists, collaborating with me. I started partnering with Kenneth Mugabe in 2017, Fun Factory, and we were doing poetry every Thursday for 2 years without missing a Thursday. So it was when I came to this event that I realized this is broad, and then my trigger lightened up, and then I was getting all these ideas, and there was just so many people to inspire me. The Wex, Sebo Lules. Those of Mitch actually came in later. Mitch was a 2018 baby. I call him a 2018 baby because I remember his first poem. I was there and I had done it for at least 2 years then. And the inspiration just went on and on and on. And before we began, we had the Kagais who began in the early 2000s. So they were actually now in maturity stage as we began. So my trigger was seeing that very many people were already expressing themselves, were already outletting things that I couldn't even have imagined are possible to just say out loud. There was already feminists like Hawa Chimbugwe. I don't know if she still identifies as a feminist. They were doing poems like "You Stepped My Toe, you Idiot," a poem that was very famous that time. If it's yours, touch it, a poem about physical harassment and, against, basically poetry was already so vocal and shaping society. I just really wanted to contribute. And that is when Luce the Poet came in and, started growing immediately. I think I'm one of the few that began immediately. That very night, I stepped on the stage for the first time, came back again and again and again until I got it right.
I think again, it's even very incredible, to know you almost you said you will be making a decade as a poet this year. I think that's a very incredible journey. But also, I love the fact that you've kind of taken us down to the fact that poetry has been here for a while. The only thing is, it's how people have been able to find their own voice or define their own style and then feel comfortable being a storyteller in that, which kind of makes me wonder if there is some sort of identity as a poet that you would say Luce the Poet is this type of a poet, and why would you say that is your style?
Whenever I say it, people get weirded out. I call myself an organic poet, and for me that comes from the fact that I don't write about what I don't understand, believe in, and can sustain emotionally, mentally, religiously. I make sure those boundaries are all met. Even if I'm just working on a love poem, I must love this person I'm writing about. I must acknowledge that I love them. I must even mention their name. I mean, this is my book called Valeria. So, and all my love corrections are names of women that I've ever loved at some point. So I am organic. It comes from my exact nature. Everything I put out comes from my exact nature. It's like a biography, really, that many years from now people will say that at this point of Lucy's life he was feeling this way about this person or about this thing in society. So I am mapping my biography through these poems I'm writing. every poem I write is a phase in my life. It is a phase in my life. I draw inspiration from things that I experience, moments that I've lived, that are piecing me together. And for me, I wouldn't say that I'm a political poet, or that I'm a love poet, or that I'm a feminist poet. I wouldn't give myself just one label. I would say that, like I said in the beginning, I'm a societal thinker. And society has so many elements to it. The climate is constantly changing. The seasons are so many. Some come back, some never come back. But I am always reflecting my times. Because I draw so much from what is going on around me and within me. So I just could say simply and plainly, I'm an organic poet.
And that's beautiful. Authenticity is probably the only thing that could never be replaceable, because again, it's a very crowded space. Like I think I told someone recently that I was really like somewhere just on a rooftop, and then looked down at people. Like I think it was about 6 p.m. Uh, and then I looked down at how people were. Some people like kind of like going home back from work. Some people were pacing really, like you could feel like they are headed somewhere. And then I felt like, yo, there is like this feel of, you could imagine if you just followed that one person and imagine how much have they gone through today, and how many stories have they encountered just in one day. Then you relate that to how we live our lives every day, with so many stories, billions of stories, just passing through our eyes on a daily. It's just natural justice, I would say. It's poetic justice to really spell out how you feel naturally. And
Yeah.
I feel it's incredible that you identify yourself as an organic poet. And still staying organic, I I know one thing that we would love to really know is, what is Lucy's very first poem that you either wrote or performed?
Uh, the very first poem I performed was not my own. I've forgotten the poet's name. It was some Indian kid from my former school. Poem was called I Remember. Very short. I was too into dead people poems. The very first poem of my own that I performed. Wow. It was a love poem. It was a love poem. The poem was the poem was called, it had series, and it was called Story of Cindy. And now Cindy is a girl I used to have a crush on when I was like 13, 12 there, back at my grandma's, my late grandma's. So I learned on her on Facebook many years when I'm now a poet.
Yeah.
And I find out she's now, a runaway. She's a baddie, the baddies of 2015.
Yo.
The early times of slay queening, or
Yeah,
queen
yeah.
slaying. So I write the story of Cindy. I'm talking about the girl I love who turned into a slay queen. That's actually when I found out that a poet called Heights the Preacher had a poem called Slay Queen. So we met up, we became great friends, and we wrote everything and now called it Chronicles of a Slay Queen. So I was saying a love story about a slay queen I'm in love with. Heights was saying a story about a slay queen who got into some trouble for wanting too much too soon. And we became a beautiful duo for that time. But a story of Cindy, me telling a story about a woman, it made me realize how sensitive that gesture is to the audience and also to the professional industry. And I think I am glad that was my first story, my first original, because it saved me a lot of trouble I would have been in the future, because now I had many years to grow around that gesture. Um, it was an incredible poem. It was embraced really well. People loved it to a point where I began now to resent it because it's all they would want me to perform. So yeah, Story of Cindy was my first poem. I haven't done it since 2017. That is about 8 years.
Is there any personal reason to that? Like, why you haven't performed it yet for like 7 years?
I wanted to tell better stories about women. That's basically the only reason. I didn't find it to be a story that I enjoyed telling, even though it made it was a conversation that a parent would want their daughter to hear, because it took me so many Rotary meetings. It took me so many schools. I remember the HM of Namagunga by then made me perform it thrice at an event. It was a poem that sensitizes, but I didn't want to scare. I didn't want to continue scaring young girls that it's so easy to mess up because you're a girl. So I decided Story of Cindy was not going to be a story I tell anymore. But there are still people who still tell the poem in poetry spaces, because some poems really just stay with people. You walk away from it, but it doesn't walk with you. It just stays on that stage, in that audience, in those hearts, and it continues to somehow find a way out. But me, as Luce the poet, acknowledging the power that my voice was carrying then, I wanted to tell more positive stories as far as women go, most importantly. So that's when I stopped.
That's incredible. And you also mentioned that probably one of, just basically the reason why you took a pause on performing Cindy is because you wanted to tell better stories. And this is an opportunity for me now to kind of learn the inspiration, still just staying close to your firsts. Your first book is, I think it's always a very special thing for every creative whenever you're putting out your first, what we call quote unquote, your first masterpiece. But if you could just share with us in maybe a few words, first of all, what your first book is and what inspired it, and just basically what were some of the issues that you were either addressing, or which specific stories were you telling in this book?
Surprising, for me anyway. To me, it's surprising. My first book was an incredible success. I think it's my most successful moment as a poet. I think most people didn't even know me. I think 60% or 70% of people that know me now and celebrate my work didn't know me until that book. It was about love. It was a love collection, but not just the casual love, because I had done so many. May I call them pickup lines now? I don't call them poems. I don't call them love poems. I call them pickup lines. Because I had 4 years of my teenagehood just writing poetry, and so which means I had and I was doing it professionally. So I had so much time on my hands to just come up with pickup lines, assemble them in stanzas, and perform them. So people knew me as a love poet. So when I was thinking about releasing my first work in the physical form, I thought I would just write still about love, even though by then my heart was already had already actually progressed to other elements. And it still tracks back to my early days. Everything I write about now, I'm not just beginning. But that book, it was dedicated to all the women that loved me in my mom's absence. The women that mothered me with love, because love is parental. Even the love you receive from your wife is motherly at some extent. It is the kind of love that stays. It's the one that is sustainable, the one that you'd fear to wrong. And I might be one of the few poets who have. I say that because the memes I see around say that poets are known to be trusted with hearts. And I'm one of the few that has been trusted with a good number of hearts by
Okay.
very amazing women. So I had a lot to say. So I wrote these poems. Some were even old poems that I had to rewrite. It was during the lockdown when I was working on this book because I had so much time on my hands. So during lockdown, while people were obsessing over TikTok and everything, I had forsaken my gadgets and I was just writing. So it was about love in all its forms. The cover photo was actually my mother. And for me, when I was telling these love stories, it was more, it was not just something to entice the mind, to stimulate the mind of the female, or to give the male mind ideas on stimulation. It was appreciation. It was exposing my vulnerability, you know. So the book was called Dear Rain because the girl I was dating then, who had been with me through the lockdown struggles, that's her name. It was also a way to appreciate her. So basically it was received. I didn't expect, I knew there would be a good reaction, but I didn't expect the level of reaction. Before the book launch, the first, because I did a DRN show first before I published the book, and hundreds of people turned up. I think it's the only poetry show in my generation, because I can't speak for the others, where over 500 people came to watch this one poet and actually paid for it. So it scared me. After that show, it scared me. Because I did the collection on stage and I told people I'll be publishing it soon. And the next days, everyone was calling me, asking me, when is the publish? When is the launch? When is the launch? So my manager then was like, Luz, this is the right moment. The manuscript is ready. The people are ready. So we put the poems together, and you should have seen me picking out which poems should go out and which should stay. It was intense. I had reasons for each poem. I had reasons for every poem. But when I announced that the launch is on this date and the copies are available, all the copies sold out. About 400 copies sold out in the first week of announcing the dates. So I had nothing to sell on my launch. So now I had to print more books, and this time make the launch invites only. That way I can control how many books go. And on the day of the launch, someone actually outed my venue, outed the location, and I received a lot more people than the books I had. So I signed, and then I had to work on pre-orders, so I had to get a second launch, and that was within 3 weeks of DRing. It was like a DRing fever. So it made me realize how important even love stories are, because I had gotten so fed up of telling love stories, but then DRing woke me up in a way. It made me realize that people relate to these poems differently from how you relate to them. So even the way I was now performing these poems was different, because now I was doing it for everyone else who has ever loved, which is basically everyone. So for me, it was important that I told those stories. It was incredible how it were received. Apparently, it actually was more than love stories for some people. For some people, it was more of self-love, you know. This is how I want to love myself. The way this poet loves rain is how I want to love myself. You know, for women, it was actually a different experience for them. It was, this is how I want to be loved. So people were finding out the kind of love they would accept more through these poems. So it was beautiful. I'm glad it was my first.
And it sounds very incredible. I think You mentioned a couple of things that probably this book actually defined history. I haven't seen yet 500 people in a poetry show in Uganda. Uh, but also, it's very incredible for an artist when you sell out books even before the launch, or even like you
Yeah,
have
it
nothing
was.
to sell during the event. I think that's very beautiful, and also the direction, the creative direction that you took with appreciating women, various women that you say have mothered you with love. And I think it's probably really just a repetitive identifier of who you are when it comes to you cropped out from a feminine world. And still, you mentioned that all of your books you have given them names of, I think, female names. So it's only right for us to talk about head and talk about Valeria, the book. Uh, first, first things first. Who is Valeria or what is Valeria? And then could you like talk about this book and just really give us an appetite to, probably want you to sell out this book as well after this interview. We want.
Now, Valeria was a limited edition. It sold out in 15 days,
Wow.
and I've been publishing a few copies every Valentine season. So this coming week towards the whole of February there will be copies. I hope you managed to get one. Valeria was more of a story on heartbreak. This book is a controversial love story. Unlike DRN, which was agreeable, this one was very debatable. I think I always tell people that people have been always asking me, Luce, you cater for women in your work. What about men? So for Valeria, I always told people during the launches, it had about 5 launches actually. And I've never really been able to perform it because the depth of Valeria as a story is actually something I am also still processing up to now. It was a great, strong, and impactful moment of my life. It was more than just Valeria for me. So I only did readings of it, and I would read the entire book every time, all the launches. And why I called it the dedication I can give to men is because this book consists of all the mistakes a man can ever do to a woman he loves. All the
Yeah,
mistakes. In
I
fact,
need to put.
the book itself says that sometimes a man's deception is also his love language. Literally, under the title, that's what you get. So, in this book, there is a concept that as men, when we are lying, we lie to people we love more than the people we don't love. That men lie to keep, not to lose. And lies are just among the many mistakes men have done towards women. Also, women have lied, but that's why I say lies are among the many mistakes we men have done to women. So, when I was writing Valeria, I had just begun navigating fatherhood. And I remember the moment Valeria came to me, I was writing about my daughter's smile. and and then I realized how much I actually love smiles. So I wrote a poem, and I wanted to name my daughter Valeria, but her mom didn't allow it. We had already figured out names. She had already gotten attached to the name. She was like, no, maybe the next one.
Oh yeah.
So I named the book Valeria months after writing this poem, when I was now experiencing a great love, because now I'm a father and there are some decisions I have to make as a father. Some people I have to lose so that I can focus more on figuring this out. Some people that didn't really understand. So when I was writing Valeria, I was projecting a lot of heartbreak and longing, losing something you really don't want to lose. You're not ready to lose. In fact, the very last lines of the book, the poet is asking Valeria to teach him how to let her go. Teach me how to let you go without it shattering my soul. Those are the very last lines. So you can see that even at the very end of it all, he's not yet ready to let go. So the fight in Valeria is very strong. Whenever I open the book, I even get a head rush. So I've not been able to actually perform it the way people know me to perform other poems. And people always ask, why did you forsake Valeria? I'm like, I never forsaked Valeria. Valeria has not yet accepted me, I haven't yet gotten that consent that I get from all my other poems. So for me, Valeria was now the heartbreak story, the one that men related to more than women. Actually, most owners of Valeria are men, and it's a pink book, so you can imagine most owners are men, and a few women who understand, this kind of man, the man that makes mistakes, the man that is afraid of the mistakes he makes but can't stop making them. So basically, Valeria is the reason I limit it a lot is because I don't even want it to get into the wrong hands, because I could get cancelled.
Okay. So I think also I just want to pick from what you said. Probably you're being a conscious artist, if I would say, and I want to say this based on some of the approach that you've taken towards community engagement. I have seen that you have adapted to a style of organizing exclusive events. Not just exclusive in terms of invites, but also quite intimate for purposes of maybe you want to spell out some things with a certain kind of audience. I would be curious, you as an artist or as a community, or you said as a social thinker, what is your approach towards impacting community versus numbers? Do you think it is something that an artist could be able to communicate? Okay, like I want to reach out as many people as possible. Let me do podcasts on YouTube. Let me try to sell as many books. Or are you a minimalist artist and you would want to sort of be able to effect your communication to smaller groups of people and probably multiply from that?
When I finally got my individuality as an artist and I was no longer under a group of people, I experienced numbers. My first show had over 100 people. My very first one, I was 18. Then I went to Juba and I actually had an audience of more than 1,000 people, because actually art in Juba is something, and they love artists from other countries because these are new stories. So I was in the favor of always getting numbers. I think if you ask around, anyone could tell you I'm one of the few poets that they say crowd pullers. So a certain bit of my career required me to reason more with the audience. I was no longer interested in exciting a crowd. I was more interested in actually engaging it in something. With big crowds, it is hard to engage. With big crowds, it's entertainment for the most bit. Osobola isaoka poem nga kamu nga kali deep, but for the most bit, you have to keep them excited. Because if one loses attention, the entire row loses attention. If one goes on their phone, the entire row goes on their phone. So there's just so much influence they're giving each other, and you can't really control it. Um, I did my best actually. There are shows when the crowd was big and I still, had a whole 30 minutes where we were really, really together throughout. But I wanted more than 30 minutes. So a time reached where I was getting the numbers, but my message was not really reaching where I wanted it to reach. It was just another good performance from Luz, another really good poem from Luz. I wanted discussion. I wanted to hear what they think. I wanted feedback, and I wanted it raw. I wanted it as organic as my poetry was to them. And for me, the solution I thought of, I was watching Tiny Desk concerts on YouTube, Instagram, and I realized this is a concept I could adopt. So the very first exclusives were similar to Tiny Desk concerts, and they gave me this creative liberty that the big crowds couldn't give me. So I decided to sustain it. The very first one was in May of 2023. I began to realize that I'm actually more in control when I am exclusive. And then when the idea grows, I take it to the ground. When it has more confidence, when I have more tricks to keep them with me. So I began doing that. And it germinated a lot of results that I wanted. So that's when I began Luz the Poet Live. Later that very year, about September there, October, then November. And then Luz the Poet Live was even better, because now I was beginning to acknowledge the groups of people that have been my audience from the time I was really little, and are now so familiar with all the phases of me, and also acknowledge the ones who are just getting to know me, So it was igniting seeing these two groups of people, and I began to think of ways to put them together so they can catch up with me at the level I am at right now. Because you wouldn't want to be growing and you're losing some of the audience as you get more. You need to also sustain what you already got along the years. So those exclusives are mostly for the sole purpose of sustaining the audience that I already have, as well as grow the new one. Now the new one will have an advantage that it is receiving the best of me as a professional artist. It is receiving a well-packaged product, no trials, because every episode I do is well-packaged. It's a project for me. It's a concept that I'm facilitating. So I'm not doing them because I'm a minimalist. No, I am admirer of a big world. I would like to reach billions of people, but a few at a time for me. A few at a time. Yeah.
Yeah, that's incredible. And I still want to keep it around there. But a little bit now focusing on you as a poetry coach. Or I would not really just want to classify you as a poetry coach, but entirely being a life coach, because most of the things you spell, reality is like embracing feminine energy as a man, the need to have that equilibrium, the need to have acceptance that, yeah, as a father to a girl child, I kind of need to take a back seat and watch her blossom. I feel like maybe it's just right to really classify you as a life coach rather than a poetry coach. But uh, just to let our audience know, or maybe to kind of give the world an idea of who you are when it comes to coaching. What are some of the things that you are doing when it comes to teaching poetry, or which
Mm.
spaces are you visiting? How are you creating impact? And generally, what would you say is the purpose for you to take this direction?
Um, I began coaching poetry 2 years after beginning the performance beat, and I was coaching verse in Vark poets with Star Nation, which is led by Kagai. The first thing I realized in my very early days as a coach is that poems have heartbeats, and when you're dealing with another person's poem, you might actually understand it better than them. So for me, I was more lured to assist the poet to understand what they are saying than to show them how to say it. And other coaches were really just showing the kids how to perform the poems. For me, I was coaching them about the emotions in the poems as I perceived them. Because imagine if, as an artist, you get the audience's feedback, not after you've created, but during your journey of creating. You know, where they say, no, when you're painting, please here use a thin brush, use a bright color. You'd come up with something more incredible. So I stopped seeing myself as just a coach. I was looking at myself as their audience, and I was telling them how I would want it to be performed for me, but in terms of the emotions that accompany it. So it sort of stood out to some of these kids. And with coaching poetry, you have to earn the trust of the poet you're coaching. They have to trust you. If they don't trust you, they won't do what you're saying at the end of the day, because they also have an idea of what they want to do with the poem. So the idea you have has to connect with theirs and then even surpass it. You understand? So I coached a lot less during verse in Vark, because there were so many poets and there were so many elders that were already doing the coaching, and I wanted to learn. Even though I realized there was a better way I could do it for my own way, I still wanted to learn what was already being done. So I sort of grounded myself a lot to first see what they are already doing, so that when I actually begin to do it, to really do it, I am doing everything they do and more. So when I began coaching poetry as an individual artist, now in 2019, mid 2019, I realized that, well, my way was better, because I identified as the audience to the poet, which helped them reflect a lot, which helped them grow a lot. And also as a creative, it nurtured me in a way, being able to code switch nurtured me in a way. So what I usually do when I'm coaching is take more time understanding what the poet was feeling during this expression, and then ask follow-up questions. Because sometimes people write emotions that they don't even realize, because we don't only write with our consciousness, also our subconsciousness participates. And it is those bits that the subconsciousness contributes that most poets don't tap into, because they can't acknowledge them. Now that's when me as a coach, I come in and I'm like, no, actually here, this is the moment you're experiencing, bring it out. So if you experience people that I have coached, well, one, you'll see a little bit of me there, because they are thorough. They are thorough products. I'm a thorough product. I don't leave out anything. When I'm performing, you will not have a moment where you think of a better way, because I'm thorough. I am a perfectionist. So I use that same obsession when I'm coaching. I have coached schools a lot of schools. I currently coach Taiba. They're winning all the slums around town now. I am
Yeah.
currently coaching Taiba. I coached St. Mary's, Chisubi, the boys' school. They won slums around that time as well. I have coached Navisunsa. Slums were one. Aga Khan. Gayaza girls keep reaching out, but the school is terrified of my hair. So we are still there, but I meet them in holidays and I coach them. I've coached a few of them. They are incredible poets. I've coached
What happened?
Joginsa.
Just a
Pardon?
moment. What happens when you're coaching them in holidays? Do you cut off hair or what, what happens to the hair?
No, in holidays, it's now my space, my rules.
Oh,
During
yeah.
school, it's the school's community, their rules. There have been schools that were strict on hair, but they wanted the service more, so they let go. Joginsa, for example, Smack, for example, Namagunga actually was the first school that let me in with all my hair. So I've coached schools around. Most of the schools I've coached, it was with Star Nation because we went to hundreds of schools, hundreds. Personally, I've coached hundreds of poets in high school, even in the professional basis of it. But the one thing I have learned throughout the entire journey is that poems are heartbeats, and you have to listen. You really have to listen. It actually, me, it goes into an hour. I even watch a normal poetry show. When I go for a poetry show, you don't want to sit around me because I'm either going to complain a lot or be too excited, and happy. Because I listen. I listen so much, I can notice when you've skipped a line, even though I don't know the poem. For me, when I'm rehearsing, I rehearse the collateral damage of in case I skip a line. Because I know that if a Kagai sits in the audience, he will know that I've skipped a line even if I don't know the poem. So I want to make sure that even he is dealt with. And I think those are levels of obsession that most poets are not really catering for, are not really reaching. But for me, I want to be flawless in that moment. That should be the only moment when I am absolutely perfect. So with coaching, I definitely perform surgery on the poem, make sure everything is alright, make sure it has gotten its best look, and it takes a lot of listening to the heartbeat. Yeah.
With so far, like the incredible journey that you've shared with us, being Luz the poet, how you started out, all this journey, I feel like it's a very unique story that it kind of gives you, and I had probably this feeling coming into the session, like it's also one of the reasons why when we're really benchmarking for stories to be able to spotlight, I kind of feel like always there is great judgment that you can make from someone according to what they write, persistently what they say, even though so many people are convinced that you can't judge them via what they post. So uh, I really just kind of wanted to pick on from that. But let's get a little loose, like keep it a little fun. So I'm just going to put you on a kind of a hot seat with only 5 questions that relate to things that you do. Hopefully you get 5 out of 5, but it's really just basic questions that relate around poetry, performance art. So we will first go through the questions. You give an answer to it. Then I'll give you, I'll kind of give you your score after. But so for the first question, who is considered the father of modern theater and is known for pioneering realism in drama?
I believe that would be Shakespeare.
Okay.
I don't think theater has gotten more modern than how we left it. So I hope I'm right.
Okay, we'll see. And then second is what's the difference between a monologue and a soliloquy in theater?
My goodness. A monologue. And a what?
And a soliloquy.
Soliloquy. A monologue is more of a singular character being given a moment to narrate a theory or a story. That's a monologue. Now that other word, I have not heard of it in my life.
Okay,
But
can I spell it for you? You might maybe my pronunciation is different, but the word is SOLILOQUY.
I mean it SOLI.
SOLILOQUY.
Nah, it's still unfamiliar.
Alright.
I think I can guess a monologue. A monologue is a singular character expressing. We are hearing a singular character expressing, and that is the opposite of a dialogue. Now, that other word could possibly be the voice, the subconsciousness of a character. I've not heard of it, but those are the only three elements of speech I know of theater on stage.
Workers are in progress.
I know, right?
Anyway, let's move to the third question. So, in poetry, what is the term for a poem with 14 lines, typically written in an iambic pentameter?
A term for a poem with 14 lines. Now, these are questions for academic poets. I don't think that's a haiku. It's not a haiku. No, I don't know what that is. I pass. I plead the fifth.
All right, okay. So the fourth question is this quite, I think it's obvious. What is the name, and you need to get this name right. What is the name of Uganda's national theater, which has played a crucial role in the country's performing arts scene?
I know that one. It's the Uganda National Culture Center. I'm a resident artist there. That's my workplace.
Okay. So our last question is, in event directing, the term blocking is often used. What does it refer to?
The major reference when you say blocking, it's basic in event planning. You said it's basically
it
event directing.
Yes.
Well, it's the same.
Yeah.
Well, where I come from, we mostly use it to. It's like a schedule. We use it to schedule particulars that things to do over time. It's like a work plan, a timeline of tasks to do with the event.
That's how you guys use the word blocking?
Yeah. Actually, we use blocking or locking. Have you locked with the deco? Have you blocked this date? Have you blocked this? Yeah. So I don't know if people who have actually studied event planning have the more agreeable language.
Well, okay. I guess it's time for us to find out a couple of the answers that you gave. Okay. First question.
It fails terribly.
First question. You said Shakespeare is considered as the father of modern theater. Well, it's a good answer. Unfortunately, you're not right.
So who is the father?
So
what's the answer?
Shakespeare is probably the father of theater, really, my personal preference as well. However, modern theater is fathered by Henrik Ibsen. So why do I feel like you're
I'm very surprised.
Okay.
Because I'm very surprised because I have very unlikable opinions about the guy.
Okay.
I,
Yeah.
I he's giving replica of Shakespeare for me.
Yeah.
But
It could.
let's move on.
Yeah. It could also be just really reflecting on already both of our personal preferences with Shakespeare. Second answer. Okay, you really went back and forth with this, but so we were supposed to differentiate between a monologue and a soliloquy. This word, personally, I think I would say I struggled pronouncing it even back in like high school and studying poetry or something. But
Guys
there's
actually
only,
studied poetry.
uh, well, it's part of maybe a high school curriculum. I don't know. The curriculum in Uganda changed, but the old
Yeah.
curriculum had poetry as a paper. I think it was paper one in L level or something. Yeah, but so a monologue is most most usually something that is considered as a long speech. I think you kind of went here and there trying to get that right.
A
So
long
it's
speech. That's all they're
by
giving
one
us.
character. It's a long speech
Ah,
by one character.
okay.
Yeah. Then on the other side, so a soliloquy is a speech where a character speaks their thoughts loud on a stage. So it's more of like almost the same thing, but now the difference is probably how long a monologue is. Then soliloquy, what I would say is most artists actually do this, thinking out loud in the bathroom, doing such stuff. But it's always more of like what I would use is the short word to say is thinking out loud. But now this is in a version of a theater during a theater
Mm.
performance. Then the other one, a poem with 14 lines, and then it has to be an iambic pentameter. It's
Jesus Christ.
it's a sonnet. This is probably what
A
Shakespeare is known for.
sonnet.
Yeah, this is what Shakespeare is probably known for. He was a father of sonnets, but
Mm.
yeah, I so far I don't see anything that you've gotten right. Let's go to
Apart
the
from
fourth.
a monologue.
So I will give you half of a mark on that.
Yeah.
Uh, the fourth one is quite obvious. It's your workspace. You nailed it.
Yeah. One and a
Uh,
half.
yes. So blocking. Maybe because I know
Man, what's that?
words sometimes have different meanings, but when it comes to event directing, blocking is often used to kind of refer to a precise staging of movement, like for actors.
A precise what?
It's a precise staging for actors on a stage.
More
So it's
like
kind of,
a script but for stage management.
yeah, ensuring that they are positioned in the right direction for
Okay.
the audience, right to the
We call it
camera.
something else in my world. We call
Yeah.
that something else actually. Entirely
What?
different. We we call it stage managing
Uh,
or movement directing. We
mm,
basically just call it what it is.
yes.
Like when I have a show to do, I get a movements director, and he's supposed to just direct my movements during my performance. And then they have to collaborate with the sound designer who says there is more sound there, so for the whispers, please walk there. So we never use the word blocking there, but we use it in event planning when we are talking about tasks. So
Yeah.
that's wild.
Well, that's a good one and a half. Well done. But I think yeah, just generally, I want to appreciate you for coming through. First of all, sharing your story with us. I feel like there's so many people that really need to find comfort in sharing what they think, and then also reflecting that through their art. And you are one of those people that I feel you're excelling in being bold enough to state your thoughts, and then not only stating them in a random way, but going ahead to write about how you feel and publishing how you feel, performing how you feel. I think it's a great way, especially for us people in the continent. We need to be able to pronounce more truth about how we feel. So it's incredible, man. But at this moment, it's probably a moment when you could tell us what's coming. Do you have an upcoming show? Do you have an upcoming book? And then also, how can we reach you out in case we want to watch some poetry from you, want to read poetry? Where can we buy your books from? And yeah, basically, how can we connect with you?
So this year is gonna be a little different for me. I have a lot of school outreaches to do with some people I've partnered with. I also have some traveling. If all goes well, I'll even reach Liverpool. But for Uganda, there's a book. It's been 2 years since the last one. This is going to be my first collection. Not a collection, actually. It's one poem in many parts, in about 12 parts for now. You never know what I write tomorrow, man. It is going to be my first political piece of work in published format, like held now, as actual evidence.
Yes.
It is going to be a book from the show I've been doing a lot the whole of last year, called The Preamble, Luce the Poet's Preamble. It's a political, I call it a protest poem, and I'm protesting bad governance, something that is not very new. It was making a lot of rounds last year. People were complaining, why is it exclusive? Why can't we all watch it? Why is it 50k? Is politics that expensive?
It is.
Yeah, the answer is politics is not expensive, but life is, and I know what I'm doing and how much it could cost me. Also, the production itself is really costly, guys. It's a costly production. It is not a microphone stand and poem. It's everything, set design and everything. So this year I am going to do a public staging of it, one like this, because I can't risk life more than once. I have a child, guys, and I'm also going to publish it that same day. It's gonna be expensive, please take note, but I will make every second of it worth your money. You will leave feeling indebted, So that is all I have this year. I plan to actually use that event as the celebration of 10 years of Luce the Poet Live. I want to showcase 3 scripts on that day. The preamble headlining, because it is a really special one for me. It's a dedication to my daughter, actually. She's the reason I care at all for such a country. So yeah, it's gonna be special, and that is the only project I have for performance this year, for people enjoying my performances and reading my work. Everything else are going to be one-offs. You'll see me at a few posters if the event planners are convincing enough, because my plan is to actually not perform at all till that day, but I've already been convinced by some good people in Ginger. Though this is an obligation, I do an annual Valentine show. It's annually, I do it every year. I'm doing it again in Ginger. It's 50k, guys. Stop complaining. That price is fair. But other than that, I don't see myself performing anything else. But that can change. Just the socials should stay. Keep stalking me. You'll see the changes. But the preamble, 10 years of Luce the Poet Live, that is definite. Everyone has to be there. Everyone who knows me. Even if they know me in theory, even if they know me through a rumor, I'll make sure they all make it that day.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, Coaching programs still go on for those who know about them. Just that now I charge, it's no longer free. Now I charge, but it's all affordable. Um, Apart from that, I think there is nothing more to expect unless God provides me with more grace, more knowledge. Yeah.
Yeah, and just to close out, in case someone wants to really reach out to you, check out some of your work, maybe watch a few of your
Oh.
performances, and even to buy your books, how can we be able to do that?
All my books are on pre-order because they have a tendency of just selling out. So now they're on pre-order because the publishers don't like to overprint the same book.
Yeah.
So now I think in the near future we shall try to get them online. We are only afraid of the copyright. The government has not yet decided that we deserve it. So waiting for them to make an actual decision. That's why you don't see most of my work on YouTube or online, because in case someone took it, I wouldn't really fight much. The copyright law is not really protecting our craft. But thinking of Amazon for people who are in the diaspora, because I have some people who like my work and they're, in other countries. But for my books, it's always pre-order. You can reach me on Instagram. I'm very responsive. My WhatsApp number is on my Instagram profile. You can call me or WhatsApp me. It's even better when you WhatsApp me because I am always on WhatsApp settling arguments of society. So I am I am online all the time. If you want to watch some of my performances, my Instagram is a very active place for me. I post a lot there. I actually don't have a Facebook anymore. So if you are following my Facebook, that is not me updating it. I had the updating. I had there is a TikTok. Guys, I'm not operating that account either. I'm not on Twitter. I'm only on Instagram and WhatsApp. And I'm still navigating how to use YouTube, but I'm a perfectionist. So YouTube requires people who are more patient and more okay with mistakes because it's a learning process to get it right. I am more comfortable with things I can get right on the first try, and Instagram is just one of those platforms where if you go wrong, you're just not serious. So yeah, for now, reach me on Instagram for any product of mine. My merchandise is only available during my stagings. I don't sell it before or after. Yeah, and I always get just limited pieces, basically to just keep the demand on. Like I have time, so I never rush. I'm never in bulk. I'm always in just quality, not quantity. Yeah, so I would just advise you show up for very many shows. And if you like an invite to my exclusives, reach out and you will get it. That's a promise. Yeah, because I'm also always looking for people to invite. Yeah.
Well, sounds great. Again, thanks, Los the Poet. In case you need to check him out, he's on Instagram. And if you've been arguing with him on the X app, that's not him.
It's not me.
Yeah, but it's been great. I really look forward to 10 years of Los the Poet. I look forward to the next books. And probably I should put it in like a to-do list to be able to attend the next exclusive event. But it's been
Yes.
really incredible learning a few things here and there from you. And I really feel like there's been never been a better time that I have seen somebody speak about what most people say is feminism, but makes sense to me. So yeah, it's been great, and catch you up during. Yes.
I'm actually I'm working on a manuscript that is going to cater for your kind. It's
Okay.
called Feminism for Non-Feminists.
Okay.
It
Looking
might
forward.
come out next year, but yeah, I'm catering for you. Don't worry. You'll be a feminist by the end of the last page.
All right. Thanks, bro. And it's been incredible doing this.